All right, everyone, we are right at 1:30, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. I want to thank you very much for making time this beautiful spring or early summer morning, depending on what part of the state you're in, or afternoon. So we are kicking off our monthly SISMA call, and want to start out. We are now officially the Florida Invasive Species Council partnership Assistance and Communications Committee. We had formerly been known as FISP, the Florida Invasive Species Partnership. And as of earlier this month, we are now fully integrated into the Florida Invasive Species Council as a new committee. The way we operate is going to be basically the exact same as before, except that we're going to have access to additional resources, and it's going to be a more integrated approach to invasive management across the state. So things on the ground shouldn't really look that much different, but I think we're going to see a lot of cool new things taking off for us across the states. So for today's topic, I'm really excited because we're getting to see something a little bit new. So I'm excited first and foremost because we get to see some of the up and coming researchers from UF's that are affiliated with UF's Invasion Science Research Institute, or ISRI, and we'll learn a little bit more about ISRI in a few minutes. But beyond that, I'm really excited because we're covering some new topics for our group. While we are definitely a natural resource focused group, I think it's still very important for us to know at least some about the many other ways that invasive species can impact our lives. So I made sure to include a variety of invasive species topics today so that we have a broader understanding of all the different ways that invasive species can affect life here in Florida. So that way we have a we can more fully explain why managing invasive species is important when we are talking to the general public. Because not everybody is going to care about all the little flora and fauna out there like some of us may, but everyone is going to care about our food supply or our housing. So there's many different things that we need to be aware of beyond the aspects that affect our day-to-day jobs. And so this is also important because next month in our SISMA call, we're going to be learning about how to speak to the public and different ways that can improve our interactions with them. So essentially what we're trying to do here is kind of build a multi-story, a multi-episode story arc in a sense. So we've got several great topics we'll be hearing about today, but I'm going to stop sharing and hand this over to Paul Evans, who is the research coordinator for ISRI, UF's Invasion Science Research Institute. All right, all you, Paul.
Hi, good afternoon. I am the research coordinator for the Invasion Science Research Institute, or ISRI, as we call it affectionately. This is one of the newer initiatives for UF, but we don't just serve UF. A lot of our goals are for this whole region in the Southeast, specifically trying to amplify a lot of the work that already is happening throughout the region, make sure that things are better connected and create more community, as well as we really, really would like to continue to look at invasion science as a multifaceted problem. Looking into human dimensions, communication, economics, on top of ecological and of course management and monitoring sides of the field. Whole bunch of different projects we currently have launching through our seed funding throughout parts of the state as well as parts of the world, looking at various sides of invasion science. And we will be having more workshops starting, I believe, in June, specifically looking to help engage grad students, postdocs, and just early career researchers on how to navigate different parts of this field, whether it's communication, presentations, or how to be multifaceted in your research approach. Yeah, excited to hear all the really good stories today, and feel free to reach out to myself if you have any other questions.
Thanks, Paul. So we'll go ahead and hand it over to Sankara Ganesh. So if you have questions during the presentation, go ahead and put them in the chat as we go through. And then we'll have time at the end of each presentation for a few questions for our researchers.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sankara Ganesh. I'm an entomology master's student at the University of Florida Citrus Research and Education Center. and today I'll be presenting my research on evaluating spatial distribution, trapping, and potential chemical control of the invasive land snail Bulimulus bonariensis in citrus. So as I mentioned, B. bonariensis is a land snail species, and it's native to the West Indies and invasive to Florida. It was first reported back in the state way back in 2009. But since then, populations have grown and spread throughout the Southeast. In 2020, Florida citrus growers started expressing various concerns regarding this snail. One of them is being drawn to moisture. These snails have a tendency to clog microjets, which can lead to reduced irrigation efficiency as depicted on the left. These snails also tend to get trapped inside individual protective covers, which can lead to the defoliation of young trees. Growers have also observed these snails feeding at sites of pre-existing winter frost damage on young trees, as depicted on the right. This can lead to further damage and even girdling. So, how can we control these snails? Well, unfortunately, there are no current management plans. However, in terms of trapping and monitoring, flat traps may be effective, which I'll get to later on. They are known to create a cool, moist environment that is attractive to slugs and snails. However, they have yet to be tested for this specific species in citrus. In terms of chemical control, there are various molluscocidal baits registered for snail control in citrus. However, again, their efficacy for this species has yet to be tested. Additionally, these baits, particularly those with the active ingredient metaldehyde, may have serious non-target effects. Metaldehyde inhibits mucus production, so when applied, mucus-producing organisms present in groves, including birds, may be put at risk as well. This leads me to my primary research question. How can B. bonariensis be effectively managed in Florida citrus production? To address this question, I broke it down into three primary objectives. One is to identify population trends and spatial distribution of these snails in groves. Two, to compare flat trap and pyramid trap efficacy. And three, to evaluate potential chemical control products. Starting off, I'll be discussing the field sampling experiment I conducted to explore these first two objectives. So, over the course of 2023, I collected bi-weekly snail count data at 3 citrus groves in Florida. I'll be referring to these sites as Lake Alfred, Lake Wales, and Polk City. To monitor snails, I utilized 2 types of traps. Flat traps, which I discussed earlier, and depicted on the left, and pyramid traps, a new type of trap that exploits these snails' love for climbing. At each site, the flat traps and pyramid traps were evenly spaced and alternated along rows of trees. It's important to note that these 3 sites vary in many different ways. They're in different locations, and additionally, they have different levels of ground cover. So after collecting this data, I graphed sampling date against total snail count for each of these 3 sites. And I found that the annual mean snail count varies greatly between them. Looking at the graph, it appears that populations fluctuate over time differently across sites. Starting with the first site, the Lake Wales site, the population appears to be more active during the summer months, with snail counts peaking around 500 in June. During the fall and winter months, the population appears to decline and remain inactive. At the Polk City site, the population fluctuates more, but appears to be active from spring to early fall, with snail counts peaking around 100 in April and September. During the remainder of the fall and winter months, the population appears to decline and remain inactive, similar to the Lake Wales population. However, at the Lake Alfred site, the population fluctuates immensely throughout the year, with snail counts peaking around 100 to 125 in May, August, and December. In contrast to the other 2 sites, the population at this site appears to remain active even during the fall and winter months. From these observations, I concluded that annual population trends vary across sites, and this could be due to a variety of differences in various environmental conditions, including temperature, humidity, precipitation, soil moisture, and ground cover. Ultimately, site-specific monitoring may be critical for identifying periods of activity and guiding management decisions. Next, using the same snail count data, I also generated heat maps using ArcGIS to visualize spatial distributions of snails in groves when populations are most active. The heat map depicted here was created using data collected from the Lake Wales site on June 12, 2024, when snail counts were the highest. The population appears to be randomly distributed, which is what I also just observed at the other 2 sites. This suggests that whole grove management may be necessary. Currently, it is unknown what environmental factors are driving snail movement within groves, but I suspect that ground cover and soil moisture may play a role. With the snail count data, I was also able to compare trap efficacy by graphing sampling date against snail counts by trap type, and then running chi-square tests. During the active period at the Lake Whale site from June to August, pyramid traps were more effective, capturing 897 snails compared to 377 captured by the flat traps. At the Polk City site, flat traps were also more effective than pyramid traps during the active period from April to September, capturing 342 snails compared to just 126. In contrast, during the active period at the Lake Alfred site from April to December, flat traps were more effective, capturing 732 snails. And what this ultimately suggests is that trap efficacy varies across sites and that growers may need to experiment with both types of traps to determine which is more suitable for their grove. In groves where pyramid traps are more effective, they may help simplify monitoring for growers, as all it takes is a quick glance to determine if snails are present. In comparison, flat traps are more labor-intensive to check. Growers will need to bend over and lift them up to check for snails. Next, I'll be moving on to my third objective, which was to evaluate potential chemical control products. To explore this objective, I conducted a field pesticide screening experiment with 6 treatments and 5 replicates per treatment. Mortality was checked 1 to 4, 7, and 14 days after treatment. Snails were placed in arenas, which were plastic buckets buried around 6 inches into the ground and filled with soil to ground level. 10 snails were added to each bucket, and after treatment, buckets were covered with mesh to prevent snails from escaping. And here is a table of the treatments I tested. I chose 3 muscocidal baits, Deadline MP, Deadline GT, and Slugger 4.0. These are all registered for snail control in citrus and have the active ingredient metaldehyde, which I discussed earlier. In addition to these products, I tested Agriflex, which has the active ingredients abamectin and thiamethoxam, as well as bifenthrin. And these 2 pesticides are not registered for snail control, but are commonly used in citrus production for control of other pests. And the reason why I tested these 2 products is that we received reports from growers who indicated that after spraying these 2 products, they noticed a decrease in snail populations in their groves. So we wanted to put them to the test to see if these 2 products were in fact effective at controlling snail population. And for my results with this experiment, I found that Fanfare ES, the bifenthrin product, exhibited a low % mortality, comparable to that of the control, so it appeared to be ineffective. However, Agriflex induced 100% mortality, comparable to that of the 3 muscocidal baits. What this means is that there may be pesticides like Agriflex already used in citrus production that may help provide control. This could help limit the use of additional pesticides, thus promoting environmental and economic sustainability. And finally, I'd like to leave you all with the main takeaways from my presentation. I found that population trends vary across sites and spatial distribution is random. This suggests that monitoring is critical for identifying periods and areas of activity. I also found that flat trap and pyramid trap efficacy is site-specific, and when effective, pyramid traps may be more efficient for growers. And finally, pesticides like Agriflex currently used in citrus production may help provide snail control, which could limit the need for growers to apply additional products. And lastly, I'd like to sort of discuss my future directions with this project. In terms of population trends, spatial distribution, and trapping, I'd like to continue sampling over the course of 2024 to 2025, and also test the data for correlation with environmental conditions to determine which conditions are the ones influencing these factors. I'd also like to explore some other types of traps, pitfall traps and bread dough baits, which could also be used as monitoring strategies, while also continuing to test the efficacy of these flat traps and pyramid traps that I discussed. I'd also like to further explore potential chemical control by replicating this experiment and testing a greater range of products. Additionally, I'd like to break down Agriflex, the one that proved to be effective, into its 2 active ingredients, abamectin, thiamethoxam, to see which active ingredient was the one that was inducing this snail mortality that we saw. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Oranges are definitely one of our big crops here in Florida. One of the things we're most known for. So I have a question about the snails. Are there any other species of snails that people might misidentify this one with?
Yeah, so actually, historically, snails haven't been an issue in citrus production. And aside from these snails, we haven't observed any others that are that present in grove. So it's very unlikely to come across another species that could get confused with this one.
Okay, so very limited chance of off-target effects then.
Exactly.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing kind of the impacts of your environmental, the ecological variables and how that seems to correlate with their distribution. I think that could be very helpful maybe for future work looking into it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it will be site specific. But yeah, in addition to that, hopefully there are some overarching trends in regards to temperature and precipitation that could be used to guide monitoring decisions throughout the year.
Dexter, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was wondering, I had to step out for a minute, so I may have missed this, but I was wondering if this snail is known to be in natural areas. Or is it more of a problem in agriculture right now? Like it likes ag areas and not natural areas.
Yeah, so from what we can tell right now, it's more present in agricultural areas. I'm sure you can also find them in forests, and they're actually also a pest in urban areas. Lots of homeowners have been complaining that these snails have been climbing all over their properties and have asked us to come check them out for them. So yeah, definitely a problem in different types of environments for sure.
I can see this being kind of a reservoir for moving into natural potentially. I know we've had plenty of plant species that have moved from more disturbed and humanized environments.
Yeah, and the thing is with these snails is they're pretty generalist feeders, right? They can feed on a wide variety of plant matter. So their habitats aren't really specific. They aren't really confined to specific habitats just because they can sort of exploit many different ones.
James, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, hi Ganesh. Thank you for the presentation. So you referred to Agriflex as being effective on controlling snails, but is not registered for snail control, but it is currently being used in citrus for, I think, insect control. Considering that, it's obviously illegal for the manufacturer to promote that product as effective on snails, but nonetheless, the knowledge is available to a producer and it's legal for them to use within citrus. Where I'm getting at is there motivation by the manufacturer to create registration or labels exclusive or specific to snail control? And if so, what kind of processes that entail, if you have any kind of information on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, in regards to what you're saying, Agriflex, as I mentioned, is not registered specifically for snail control. However, because it is routinely used by growers regardless, growers will continue to use it. And that idea is that sort of by relying on their current pesticide regimes, they'll be able to control snails without needing to introduce additional products. And like you mentioned, we actually are hopefully, we'll get to the point where we can work with pesticide companies to register their products for snail control, just so it is legal and that growers can specifically use these for their snails. In terms of the process for registering snails, the products against snails, I'm not too familiar with that. But that is definitely something we'll be looking into in the future.
So we got a comment in the chat that they have observed the Bullimulus species in Miami-Dade natural areas. So they already are kind of getting out into our natural areas. Do you have any thoughts for us on how what things we might be able to check where people could look in their natural areas to see if they are already out there and we just haven't noticed yet?
Yeah. So these snails, they're really drawn to moisture, as I was mentioning earlier. So you typically can find them sort of hiding underneath large rocks or branches on the ground. And these snails also love to climb, actually. So we have noticed quite a few of them climbing up trees. So just by examining the bark of trees, I think that should be a good way to sort of keep an eye out for them, and also sort of checking underneath debris, as mentioned, rocks, branches, anywhere sort of moist and cool where they could seek shelter from the sun.
Great. Any more questions? Oh, Paul, we got another one coming in.
I did just want to ask if you guys have any outreach or citizen science material in place to kind of help with understanding, passing along some of this information, as well as potentially trying to get some citizen reporting in areas outside of private farmland.
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently there isn't any sort of network set up. Actually, there was a blog that was publishing some information about this species. That's how it was first discovered. There was by a snail collecting club back in Jacksonville, right? So that's where citizens were reporting their observations. So there is a blog that's been going on. I'm not sure how active it is now, but I think definitely a citizen reporting type of website or program would be great to develop, and that could be something I could look into in the future.
Yeah, we can talk more about that stuff later, but I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions before we move on to our next presenter? All right, thank you very much, Sankara.
Great, thank you so much.
Up next would be Lovely.
Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, I can see your screen okay, but I'm seeing the kind of the typical view, not the presenter, the
Yeah.
slide. There we go. Yep.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Lovely and I am a PhD student in the Department of Entomology and Nematology. I work with Dr. Shriyanka Lahiri at Gulf Coast Research and Education Center. And as a lab, we are more focused on management of pest of strawberries, especially chili thrips. Today, I will talk about not my own research, but I will talk about more the research and the projects that we do as a lab, which is the management of chili thrips in various ways. And also I'll be talking about the impact of this insect in strawberry. So to start with, as you have already seen in my title, our candidate insect is commonly known as chili thrips, but it has more common names. Like in different countries, it has been named as yellow thrips or tea thrips, but the scientific name is Scytothrips dorsalis. The thrips originally belong from the insect group Thysanoptera, and the main character of this insect group is their wing. They have this feather-looking wing. They are also called as fringed wing insect. Apart from the wing character, they are also very small in size. For example, an adult chili thrips is measuring on less than 2 millimeters in length, and they are also very cryptic in nature. These two characters, the small body size and cryptic nature, help them to go undetected in the imported plant material and also help in the invasion in the new geographic area or in a new country. Our chili thrips is native of Southeast Asia, but this pest has been intercepted by USDA aphids during 1980s in the imported cut flowers, fruits, and vegetables. With the increased international travel and trade, this pest has made their entry beyond this checkpoint and was able to establish the population in the mainland. The first established population was reported from the Okeechobee County in 1991. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about its distribution. As I mentioned before, that this pest has been found in the Asia or Southeast Asia. Chili thrips has been reported from India, Japan, Thailand, and also from in African continent like Kenya, Ivory Coast, and South Africa. Apart from the United States, it has been reported from some South American countries like Venezuela. Now, a little bit about its life cycle. Chilli thrips life cycle has 6 stages: the eggs, 2 larval instars, 1 prepupal stage, pupal stage and adult. The eggs were laid inside the plant tissue, preferably inside the leaf. After 2 to 7 days, the eggs are laid. The larva comes out, hatch out from the egg, and start feeding on the leaf. And then they grow, become the second instar larvae, and eventually move through the pupal instar. The pupa lasts for about 24 hours, then they molt and become the adult. And this life cycle continues. The length of the life cycle on an average is from 11 to 18 days, depending on the temperature and the host plant. Usually when the temperature is cooler, it takes longer for them to complete the life cycle. And for the host plants, it differs also. In tomato, usually it takes about 13 days to complete, but in chili pepper, the life cycle completes within 11 days. Now let's talk about the host plant. In literature, chili thrips has been reported as a polyphagous insect, which means it can feed and reproduce on multiple host plants. There are more than 40 plant species and 40 different plant genera and 200 plant species reported as a host of chili thrips. Here I have listed a few important plant species as a host of chili thrips. Among ornamentals, roses, geraniums, hydrangeas, crepe myrtle, English ivy, coleus are the important host of chili thrips. Among vegetables, different beans, chili pepper, tomato, sweet potatoes are the important host. And among fruits, citrus, blueberries, and obviously strawberries are the important host of chili thrips. So why do we care for chili thrips in these strawberries? Many of you might know that strawberry has become an important horticultural crop for the state of Florida. Currently, strawberry is grown in around 13,000 acres, which generates revenue of about $500 million. Though our strawberry growers are facing many challenges from the international competition, labor shortage, different governmental regulation, unstable market prices, but disease and pest management is one of the major threats that is faced by our strawberry growers, because the disease and pest management can add extra cost to the cost of cultivation of strawberries. Now I want to show you some of the damage symptoms incurred by chili thrips in strawberries. Chili thrips has this piercing sucking type of mouthpart, which they use to poke into the plant tissue and suck the cell content. And they leave behind the dead and necrotic tissue in the plant, which in turn become darker in color. The damage starts from the very base of the leaf and eventually spread through the leaf vein. And in the advanced stage of infestation, the leaves become brittle, curl upward, and they obviously look distorted. These are few more damage symptoms in strawberries can be seen as bronzed and malformed leaves, cracked fruits, which is not marketable anymore, and the advanced and heavily damaged plant stops growing and fail to produce any marketable fruit. So how to manage them, how to control this pest to taking over the strawberries? Before talking about any management option, I want to talk about monitoring. Monitoring is the process which allow us to observe, record, and measure the growth and development of any organism in an area over time. And why do we need monitoring? To know which pests are present. Is the pest population is changing with the growth of the plant? And what is the status of our beneficial insect, our bees and our ladybug beetles in the area? And finally, monitoring helps us to decide the appropriate management options. So the first management option can be the cultural control. This is more of the preventative methods. Cultural control is something that changes the habitat or creates a barrier so that our harmful insect can establish or grow their population in the area or in our field. The first example here is the banker plants or refuge plants. These flowering banker plants can provide a habitat or refuge for our beneficial insects or predatory insects that can help check the population of our harmful insects or chili thrips to establish in the strawberries. The second is the reflective mulch. As the name mentioned, this mulch reflects the sunlight, especially UV light from the sunlight, which impairs chili thrips' ability to locate their host plant. And the third example is the host resistance. This is one of my project in my PhD, where we have evaluated 7 different commercial cultivar to see which cultivar perform better with the natural pest pressure, because host resistance is utilizing the plant intrinsic characteristics. Maybe it's their physical characteristics such as leaf thickness, leaf hairiness, or the canopy density, or the chemical characteristics such as the volatiles or the nutrient present in the leaf. And our goal is to provide a plant which is not a better host for the plant so that they don't establish on these plants. The next option is the biological control. Biological control is something where we utilize other living organisms to control our harmful insects in the field. In the left here, we have the predatory insect, which is Oria species, commonly known as mining pirate bugs. This species, this insect has the big type of mouth part that they stab the softer body portion of chili thrips and feed on the body fluid and eventually kill the insect. The second insect here, the second organism here is the predatory mite. It works with the same functionality, feed on the body fluid of the insect. On your right-hand side, we have the entomopathogenic fungi and entomopathogenic nematode. These two can be sprayed on the top of the plant, and eventually the fungi and the nematode can infest the chili thrips and kill them and can check their population. All these predatory insects, mite, the fungi, and the nematodes are commercially available. Our farmers can buy this and release them as per needed. And the last method is the chemical control. We have 2 types of chemical control available for managing chili thrips in strawberries. First is the synthetic chemicals, such as Radiant, Exirel, SL, and Sibentoprine. These are all commercial names, but these chemicals are recommended to apply only twice per growing season and also in rotation with other mode of action insecticides. The next group is the botanicals, which is the plant-derived chemicals. First is the Captiva prime, which is derived from capsaicin or chili pepper, and the next is Azira, which is a product of neem. Now, as the take-home message, I can say that the chili thrips is originated from Southeast Asia and has become the important pest of ornamentals and strawberry in the state of Florida. But we need a integrated control option for long term, so that we have a preventative approach such as cultural controls and to check our population, and the chemical control when the population actually go beyond the control, we can check them with the chemicals we have. But we need to apply these chemicals in rotation so that we can check the insecticide resistance in this pest. And these are few of the references that I have used for making this presentation. And with that, I'd like to acknowledge all our lab team, especially Dr. Lahiri, who is my PhD advisor. All this research has been done under her supervision, and all this research has been done by our lab members. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for listening to me, and I'm open to any question.
Thank you very much, lovely. Strawberries are definitely the other flagship crop when it comes to Florida. We do have one question already in the chat. They're asking if chili thrips are known to affect any native plants.
Mm, since it's a like go for multiple plant, multiple host, I'm not sure for native plants, they mean native flowering plants. What is native plant like?
Yeah, so any of the plants that were, you know, native to Florida, so things you might find out in our woods, natural areas. So could they potentially affect those species as well too?
Can be, but I haven't seen or read any paper on chili thrips feeding on native plant. So I can't say for sure, but yes, there is potential that they can, yeah, they can feed on.
Do we have any other questions at the moment? I just want to say I absolutely loved the photos of the biocontrol species, like coming in and catching them. That must have been very difficult to find, to catch those small of creatures interacting like that. Very neat to see.
Yeah, thank you.
So I do have one question real quickly. So, you know, when you're working with the producers and the growers, do they seem to have a preference for one type of the possible control options? Like I really liked the cultural control, because I know we tend to use a lot of chemical methods in our agriculture. But you know, is there, you know, is one better than the other, or is there a strong preference in growers for some different types of control for these species?
Yeah, they were tend to like few years ago, they were tend to use only chemical control, but I think it's our university and its extension program. The growers, the picture I have showed, the banker plants and these are actually growers field. So our growers has adopted these techniques slowly, but yeah, they are adopting.
Very cool. All right, any other questions before we move on? Thank you very much, lovely. And if you have questions later on, you can put them in the chat.
Thank you.
All right, so our last speaker today will be Abhishek. And he'll be talking about confronting aquatic invaders. So moving kind of back in towards our natural areas realm.
Hi, Deborah. I think I cannot share my screen.
Let me, all right. Okay, I should have changed it back. Can you share now?
Is it visible?
We are seeing the presenter view. So you want to switch which one that's showing.
Is it visible now?
No.
Oh, no.
All right, yep. There we go. We got the good view.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, your audio is good.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I thought that I'm not audible. So, hi, everyone. My name is Abhishek. I'm a third year PhD student at Food and Resource Economics. And today I will be presenting about hydrilla management in Florida. So the study is titled as Confronting Aquatic Invaders, Assessing Public Perceptions and Willingness to Pay to Control Hydrilla in Florida. So, and the collaborators on this research are me, Dr. Lisa Sevchenko, Dr. Prince, Dr. Liari, all are from University of Florida. So before I give a brief background that why do we want to do this study or what is the motivation behind this. So a little bit about what is how aquatic invasive plant management is being done in United States. So as we know that aquatic invasive plants, they have harmful effects on the environment, as well as they affect negatively, have an impact on the biodiversity, as well as on the recreational use of water. So because of that, the economic losses from aquatic weeds in United States are estimated to exceed $1 billion every year. And United States spends around $100 million every year to control aquatic invasive plants. And Florida is said to be one of the largest aquatic invasive plant management program in the United States. And as you can see from the figure on the right, which is a study done by a UF researcher, and it shows that the highest or the largest amount spending done on any aquatic invasive plant is done on the hydrilla. And hydrilla is said to be like one of the most aggressive aquatic invaders in Florida waters. So around $10 million is every year spent based on this estimation. $10 million is every year spent on controlling hydrilla. So there is a huge economic cost to for controlling the hydrilla. So coming to what is hydrilla? So it is a submerged aquatic plant. As you can see on the picture on the left, it was introduced in the year 1950s, came from somewhere in Asia or South Asia. And it is said to be the most aggressive invasive plant in Florida waters, as I said before. And because it grows at a very rapid rate, and you can see it from the figure on the right, that compared to a common native plant, the growth rate of hydrilla is very high. And because of that, its ability to grow at a very rapid rate, it kind of forms like very dense canopies on the water, and which adversely impacts native plants and animals, the recreational use of water. It also affects the property values, and also creates issue with flood control. So it has like many negative impacts on the biodiversity and as well as on the human use of water. However, it is also valued by some stakeholders like fishermen, duck hunters, because as I said that it forms a dense canopy over the water. So which provides habitat for many species of fish as well as birds. So, and it is that's why it is valued by fishermen and duck hunters. As far as hydrilla management is concerned, so herbicide application is the most common method, or it is the most preferred method so far, because of its cost and effectiveness. As you can see from the figure on the right, that majority of the hydrilla control or the treatment is being done using herbicide. And as it is said that mechanical harvesters are unable to keep up with the rapid hydrilla growth, and that makes them like very expensive, or almost like 2 to 3 times more expensive than herbicide, and also less effective. And that's the reason that herbicides are preferred for hydrilla control in Florida. However, although it is a preferred method, but there are several concerns which have been raised about the use of aquatic herbicides. So, and the perception of the public is that it creates water quality issues, and it also impacts the native plants and fish. And so there is a whole perception about safety issues after the treatment of water, after herbicide application. And because of these issues, these concerns, which has been frequently raised by the local communities, Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, which kind of oversees the hydrilla management in the state of Florida, it halted or it suspended the management activities for 3 months to gather public input. And it did focus group discussion with the local communities, which has different stakeholders. And those meetings kind of also revealed that there is a preference for non-chemical method of hydrilla control. And those meetings also revealed that there are competing concerns and different economic considerations of different user groups like fishermen, duck hunters, or environmentalists, or property owners. So there are different user groups, and different user groups have their competing concerns or different preference for the coverage of hydrilla or hydrilla management. And this kind of motivates our study to understand the preferences of different hydrilla management option among the broader population of Florida. Since those focus group discussions which were done with FWC, those were with like small groups. So we wanted to understand that what is the preference for different hydrilla management options among the broader population of Florida. And we also wanted to understand or to estimate that whether there is willingness to pay for different hydrilla management options. And if it is, what is the willingness to pay? How much they want to pay for different hydrilla management options? So we wanted to understand their preferences as well as the willingness to pay. So for this, we surveyed around 3,069 Florida residents across Florida, and it kind of the sample is a representative of Florida population, and we used a choice experiment method to elicit preferences, to collect preferences over different management options and its attributes. So a choice experiment is an economic method which is used to understand the preferences when different choices are presented to respondents. And to conduct this choice experiment, we needed attributes and labels. And so attributes and different labels for different management options. So here for the management approach is an attribute. So we have three kind of management approach, which is herbicide, mechanical harvesting, or a combination of herbicide and mechanical harvesting. Similarly, if the attribute is hydrilla coverage, so there were levels like 25% of coverage, 50% coverage, 75% coverage. So other attribute was effectiveness, but that is the number of days of suppression of hydrilla. Then it was what is the impact of that management method on the habitat, and what will be the cost to the respondents. So we took 4 costs: $10, $25, $75, and $150 annually. And a typical choice set looks like this. So this is the choice set which was presented to the respondent. It has 3 options, option A and option B. They were kind of combination of the different option A or not option B. It is kind of an opt-out option, and which opt-out option. So we presented 3 options to the respondent, and they have to choose out of this. So out of these 3 alternatives, and later we took the responses from this choice set and used another economic method called mixed logic model to estimate the willingness to pay for different attributes, for different levels of the attributes. So coming to the result part, so this is a descriptive statistics which we got from the survey. We asked the respondents that what is their preferred hydrilla management option. And we gave them 4 options: combined use of both herbicide and mechanical harvesting, continue using aquatic herbicides, switch to mechanical harvesting. And as we can see that 50% of them said, 50% of the respondents wanted the combined use of both herbicide and mechanical harvesting. 24% only said that they wanted to continue with the current practice of aquatic herbicide. 20% said that they wanted to switch to mechanical harvesting, and 6% said went for the other options. So majority of them wanted to move away from the use of aquatic herbicide. Now coming to the willingness to pay, which we estimated using the choice experiment. So the first one, which you can see, which is for the opt-out option, which is the third option C, which I have already shown in my choice set. And as you can see that the marginal willingness to pay is negative and very high. And it comes from the intuition behind this is that if a respondent is choosing option C, so the overall estimate shows that it is negative and very high, which kind of shows that the loss of utility, the perceived loss of utility if nothing is done against hydrilla. So option A and option B kind of represent that a hydrilla management action is being done, and option C kind of shows that nothing is being done against hydrilla. So that's why we see this negative $271, which kind of represent the perceived loss of utility. Whereas for mechanical harvesting and for the combined use of both mechanical harvesting and herbicide, we can see that the willingness to pay for mechanical harvesting is $38 more than the use of herbicide application, and whereas it is $49 more for the combined use of both mechanical harvesting and herbicide. And it kind of shows that the respondents have the highest preference for the combined use of mechanical harvesting and herbicide, followed by mechanical harvesting, and the least preference is for the aquatic herbicide. And this is for the entire sample. But we know that we have a very big sample of 3,000 people, and it has a lot of heterogeneity because we have different user groups. So we kind of did separate estimation for different user groups and try to compare their willingness to pay. For example, here I'm comparing the visitor, two groups, which is visitor and non-visitor. By visitor, I mean those who have visited the lakes of Florida, and non-visitor, those who have not visited the lake of Florida in last 12 months. So, and here we see that the visitors have a higher willingness to pay. And when we compare their marginal willingness to pay, and we can see that for both the methods, the willingness to pay of visitors is more than non-visitors, which I think is quite obvious also, since visitors are more concerned because they are more, they are visiting the lake, they are in more, that's why it makes them more concerned about hydrolandus growth in the water than non-visitors. Then we try to compare two user groups, one those who have fishing license or waterfowl permits, and other who do not have any license or permits. And here we see kind of an interesting result. We see that those who have fishing license or waterfowl permits, they have the highest preference for mechanical harvesting, as you can see from the $49, followed by the combined use of mechanical harvesting and herbicides. Whereas those without license, they have the highest preference for the combined use of mechanical harvesting and herbicide, and followed by the preference for mechanical harvesting. And here we can see that those with fishing license, their willingness to pay is less for the combined use than those without license, whereas their preference is highest for mechanical harvesting, as they are ready to pay more for that than those without license. So it also shows that there is heterogeneity when it comes to, or there is difference when it comes to about the preference of the management option which is being used among different user groups. So our study also included one experimental design which was there to test the impact of information from different sources on the preference and willingness to pay of respondents. So the respondents were randomly assigned to a control group which did not receive any information, and to 5 treatment groups which received the same information, but the source of information was different in all the groups. So for example, like for the treatment 1, there was no source. It received the information, but there was no source. Treatment 2 received the information, but the source of information was Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. And treatment 3 received the information, source of information was scientific study, and so on for T4 and T5. And this is how a treatment information looked like. So a treatment information had like a balanced information about the pros and cons of both the methods, which is herbicide application and mechanical harvesting. And we wanted to test that how this information influences the willingness to pay. And this figure of over here, it shows the comparison of willingness to pay between control and treatment groups. And as you can see that for all the treatment groups, the willingness to pay is less than, or so on the y-axis we have difference in the marginal willingness to pay, and it kind of shows that on providing information, the willingness to pay decreases. And the decrease, we can see that it is significant for almost like all the sources, and it is highest when the source of information is scientific study, which kind of shows that on providing information, it kind of creates some kind of ease about the use of herbicide. People do not perceive it as bad when there is no information provided. So my key takeaways from the study are, overall, there is a high concern about using aquatic herbicides to control invasive plants. Respondents have the highest willingness to pay for a combination of herbicide and mechanical harvesting approaches. And there is substantial heterogeneity in stakeholder preferences, although I have not included over here, but we compared like those who are more concerned about environment, those who are not that much concerned about environment. So we also compared other groups as well, and there also we saw different like heterogeneity in their willingness to pay. And providing information about both management options may ease some concerns about herbicide use, as we can see that on providing information, the willingness to pay decreases for mechanical harvesting or for the combined use of mechanical harvesting and herbicide. And the source of the information is also important. Our study shows that scientific sources have a stronger influence on residents' preferences compared to other sources of information. That was it. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please shoot.
The really interesting study there. Thank you, Abhishek. We do have one question in the chat already. We're asking for kind of clarification about the survey questions you sent out. So the survey, so you were asking about chemical and mechanical treatment options, or just chemical?
Yeah, I think we were asking about three kind of approaches. One uses chemical control, which is using herbicide. Second was using mechanical harvesting, which is the mechanical control. And third was using a combination of both chemical control and mechanical harvesting. So
Um,
we were comparing these three approaches.
okay. Diane, let me know if that did not answer your question. Do we have any other questions from the group? I have one. So, if we have people come up to us when we're doing a treatment, do you think it would be beneficial maybe to kind of get an idea of, what stakeholder group they might belong with? Or, before we really start talking with them, or is it better to just take a broader approach, like you said, and mention, the pros and cons of all the options that we have and just kind of treat everyone with a broad brush?
Sorry, I didn't get your question. What are you asking? Are you asking about the information treatment?
Yeah, so information treatment, like if we're
Yeah.
talking to someone, is it worthwhile to, since there's such variety in the stakeholder groups,
Yeah.
is it useful to try to talk about from that point of view, or is it better to be more generalist in how we approach?
I think the information treatment which we made, I think it was more generic in nature. I think the idea was that I think there was some kind of like the perception about the chemical control uh, is very lopsided, and we understood that the people don't know the cons of mechanical control in a much better way. Like it also targets non-native species. It also has a lot of bycatch. So those kind of things, I think uh, we don't have the public, the general public does not have that much information about it. So the information treatment kind of put the entire picture into a more balanced way between the chemical control and the mechanical control, trying to portray that, okay, these are the pros and these are the negatives of both the methods. And yeah, and we try to make it keep it as balanced as possible.
All right. We have a question in the chat asking about sterile carp as I guess a mechanical option.
Sorry.
Someone is asking about looking at sterile carp for treatment, like the triploid grass carp. Did you evaluate that or consider that?
Okay. About the biological control, no, I think we did not include biological control in our study. And yeah, it did not have it. The information was only about the herbicide application, the chemical control and the mechanical control.
James, hand up.
Yeah, Abhishek, thank you. It was great to see how this has progressed and excellent work. My general question is I really appreciate the novelty of reaching out broadly to the general public. And so do we have any information that describes how many people relate to the lake systems of Florida and how many of them actually know what hydrilla is and if they understand that it's invasive? Is getting to the basics of, does the general public know about hydrilla and how it's invasive in our aquatic systems?
Yeah, I think we had this in our survey, and because I think we have limited time, so I did not show that. So yeah, I think we asked about the familiarity and the awareness of hydrilla, and we found that in our sample, almost 70% of the people, 69, as far as I remember, 65 to 70% of the people, they were familiar with hydrilla and hydrilla management.
All right, we have one last question from the chat, and then we'll need to go ahead and move on to the last little bit of our presentation. So someone's asking if mechanical harvesting by itself can make problems worse by fracturing the hydrilla and allowing it to spread.
Yeah, definitely. I think first, yeah, it can have issues because we know that the parts of hydrilla, if it gets carried away with boat and other thing, it can again help in propagating it, or it can help in growing in other parts also. So definitely there are concerns regarding that. And I think the main concern, I think, as far as I understood, is that the cost is like the cost is too much of using a mechanical harvesting. At the same time, it cannot keep pace with the growth of hydrilla. So I think there are practical issues concerned with the method. So as far as I understand, the sole use of mechanical harvesting, that is not possible. And at the same time, the issue of bycatch along with other plants is also one of the issues which does not get, which the public, I think, has not much idea about.
Well, thank you very much. We're right at 2:30 and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thanks to all of our presenters. This is really interesting research and we look forward to seeing what else you all do throughout your careers. I'm going to start sharing our few wrap-up slides real quickly and I will move through these very quickly to be respectful to everyone's time. So we have lots of great events still going on throughout the state. We have up in the Panhandle workshop tomorrow and want to also highlight down in Southwest Florida, they're doing their invasive freshwater fish roundup this weekend. So if you haven't already signed up for that and you're in the area, I encourage you to try that. We also have moving into May, there's a lot of good events going on, several work days and meetings, and while we're still having a little bit of cooler weather throughout the state. Want to give a quick highlight onto our EdMaps badges. So the Florida Invasive Species Council earlier this month, our amazing theme of the Guild of Invasive Plant Assassins. We're trying to capitalize on that this year. If you are not already a FISC member, you can always join and get an EdMaps account. And by reporting invasive species through these different taxa, you can get your taxa-specific badges that are on your account. Some quick announcements. There is next month an invasive ant boot camp available in Gainesville, and you can go to their website to look at that. And we have 2 funding options available looking at being able to eradicate invasive species and then one for aquatic invasive species. Lots of great talks continuing on with our SISMAs through the rest of the month. Again, next month we'll be talking about communicating with the public where we can build on some of the things we learned today and how we share and the different ways we talk about invasive species and how they impact our lives. These calls are recorded and will be up on our YouTube channel, and I will have those posted shortly. I want to thank everyone for your time and have a great month. We will see you in May. Thanks again to our student presenters.
Thank you.